Thanks for joining us again on the Marriage Puzzle Podcast. I'm Julie.
And I'm Thomas.
And we're continuing our series of 15 lessons after 15 years of marriage. And we've made it all the way to lesson 11, which we've titled Fight for Resolution. Because we've seen a lot of couples either say they don't have conflict at all, or they're having a lot of conflict. So we just thought we would take our approach on conflict. And if spoiler alert, we're all for fighting for resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to know more about our stance on fighting or conflict in marriage, you can go back and listen to the podcast that's titled The Good Fight, where we did a book review and shared kind of our thoughts on that. But we thought we'd just kind of dive in today on the lesson number 11 to encourage you guys to fight for resolution.
Yeah, as this is, one of our 15 lessons. It's obviously an area over 15 years we've got some experience in. And so we know some good areas, good things to do, and we know some really bad things to do in a fight. And so, like Julie said, there's couples that have both ends of the spectrum on this of, just extreme bad fighting, loud arguing, and just no conflict, and then others that are just no conflict whatsoever. And we don't really think that either of those is healthy.
Right.
Conflict is natural. It's basically just a cause of change. And so, when conflict happens, it just means something has to change from the way that you're doing it right now. And if there's no conflict, that could turn out to be a negative change, and we'll get to that in a bit. And, if there's extreme conflict, I think that's going to just kind of keep the pressure cooker on and keep the pressure boiling.
Yeah, it's something to definitely lean into and not avoid. But there's there's a good fight or a bad fight. There's right and wrong ways to handle conflict. But healthy conflict in marriage, like Thomas said, it needs to be the cause of change. So you kind of need to lean into that. When there is conflict, there's tension. It's like, wait a minute, what can we learn from this? Because a conflict is simply the result of two opposing or different views, but it does not have to be an event that puts you against each other.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a fight for one person to win. That's why we're titling this Fight for Resolution, not Fight to Win, because it's not necessarily about one person winning. It's not like sports. Sports, you have to have a champion. Like, you're going for the gold medal in the Olympics, things like that. The marriage isn't that way. You shouldn't be looking to necessarily be the winner. I think that if you're fighting for resolution, you're both trying to see each other's points of view and come to the resolution that is going to work best for you.
That actually leads into point number 1, because we have 5 points in this fight for resolution. And number 1 is, newsflash, you're on the same team.
Right.
And so, in those, when you're leaning into conflict and you're having that, just deep discussion, you need to remind each other, kind of make that commitment before the conflict happens, that you're on the same team, and you can nicely remind your spouse during that tension that, hey, we're on the same team. We're trying to accomplish a win for our marriage, for our family. We're not against each other here.
Yeah, it's not just for me. It's, not just for you. I would just say, word of caution in that. Don't say it as a point of view to just try and get your spouse to calm down. When you're in a fight, you don't want to tell the other person to calm down. That's not going to make them more calm. So make sure you pay attention to your tone of voice in this. That can be very important. And so, if you just say, hey, just letting you know, we're on the same team. I'm here to work through this with you. That's different than, if you're kind of on the defense saying, hey, we're on the same team, chill out. Those are two very different ways to approach this. So be aware of your tone of voice when you're bringing that up, because approaching it with a calm tone will probably go a lot farther.
Absolutely. And I think, another way of saying you're on the same team is you need to hear, the other person's perspective. Like you need to hear their perspective. And then you get to bring your perspective to the table. And then maybe you need to discover a third perspective that both perspectives gives a new idea that together you never would have thought about if you didn't both bring something to the table. And I think that's why some couples shy away from conflict because, they think it's better.
Right.
But it's like, actually, let's talk about it, but on the approach that you're on the same team. So share your perspectives and then come up with a new game plan that would be that cause of change in a positive way.
Yeah, and just to clarify one more thing in that, we're not necessarily saying that that third perspective needs to come from a third party. That is something that you guys need to come together with your each individual perspectives and try and formulate that third perspective together. Now, in last week's episode, we talked about the influencers of your marriage,
Right.
And choose your influencers wisely. And so make sure that it doesn't not mean that you don't want to get that third party perspective, but you guys really need to work at it first. And then if you're going to seek outside help, you need to do that together rather than one of you going and talking about it with a group of friends and then coming back and being like, well, they said we should do this, so that's what we need to do. That's just going to cause another fight.
Well,
so
a simple example, it just popped into my head. So hopefully it'll apply to this tip number 1. But this week we were, Thomas and I were trying to come up with something that we needed to, just kind of have a vision statement for our family. And we weren't agreeing. We weren't fighting, but it was hard to like come up with something together. And so it was kind of like, hey, why don't you write 5 things? I'll write 5 things. We'll come to the table and share those. And it was so easy then to come up with something totally different. We didn't pick, Thomas won or Julie won or whatever, but then together collectively, because we had different perspectives, that's where we came up with that third perspective together. And we, got our vision statement just in a simple exercise like that.
Yeah, that might be a super simple technique to try if you're in a conflict, is just writing down your own point of view, because that can eliminate the what you heard versus what they said type of a situation. If you write it down and read it off of your paper or your iPad or whatever, then it's you can always refer back to that and say, well, actually I didn't say that, which leads us kind of into our next point.
Yeah, I was gonna say take that away.
So the next one is number 2 is saying what you heard them say and asking for clarifying questions. So if Julie and I are in an argument and she's upset about something and I say, so what I heard you say was blank, proceed to say what I heard. That does a couple things. That lets her know that I was listening, and even if I get it completely wrong, that at least I was listening to what she had to say. And that will just kind of let her know, okay, maybe I didn't hear it right, maybe she didn't say it right or clearly enough, or I didn't understand it. And it lets her know that I want to know what her side of it is, what I want to go deeper in her feelings and figure out what's going on, so that I can understand it more.
Well, then I could try again. Say, no, that's not what I was trying to say. Let me try again. And it's a good back and forth, calmer communication. And even when you're asking your spouse, what I heard you say was this, or am I tracking with you? You're not necessarily agreeing with them yet. You're not giving in. Just,
Right.
Yep, you win. That's whatever you want, whatever you say, I'll do. You're trying to just validate their feelings, because some of that is the conflict will not, I don't want to say like resolve and go away completely, but it won't be as intense if you just feel heard.
Right.
Sometimes you just want to be heard and understood. So
Right.
when you're saying that back to me, I'm like, no, you don't understand me, but let me try again. You're not just like attacking back on, I'm upset now, you're upset, and we're just escalating and we're not listening to each other.
Yeah.
So it's a good back and forth, asking those clarifying questions, understanding that one side, that one perspective that we talked about earlier. And then you get to bring your perspective, can I can I give you another idea? Can I counter that?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, yeah, let's have this two-way conversation, inviting you in, and because we're on the same team.
Yeah, and talking about same team, I think it's a true team when you seek first to understand the other person's perspective and not feel like you have to fight to have your perspective win. That's not the goal. You may need to make sure you have your perspective heard, but I think that to do that, the easiest way to get your perspective heard is to listen in order to be heard. And so if you come to the table and there's a conflict that's arisen in your marriage, and you come to the table and, not necessarily physically a table, I mean, you can physically sit at a table, but, if you come to the table and, you're asking those clarifying questions to your spouse and saying, I believe you're saying this, I'm trying to understand, I'm really listening to you, and here's what I'm hearing, then that's going to open the door for you to then be able to calmly say what you were feeling after that. If, like Julie just said, if the most common thing that you often need is just to feel like you've been heard. Once you feel like you've been heard, you're going to be a lot more receptive to hearing the other person's point of view as well. So, if you come with that, also one of our recent episodes was called Be the Best Spouse. And so, maybe there's this competition of, no, I want to hear what you have to say first. If you're deferring to try and let them talk and let them get their feelings out, then hopefully that opens the door for you to do the
Your
same.
spouse will probably stop yelling. They'll be like, wait, what? What did you just give me the floor? Yeah. I'll calm down and talk. But tip number 3 in Fight for Resolution has 3 points to this tip. So don't be passive, don't be aggressive, and don't be passive aggressive.
Yeah.
So I love that. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So being passive means that you're just giving in and you're not giving your spouse your full support towards a team win, because you aren't telling them your opinion. So, they come to you with a conflict or something that they're upset about, and you're like, okay, fine, we'll just do it your way, just to avoid the conflict, get it out of the way, and move on. And I think that is, again, referring back to some of our 15 lessons, our very first lesson in this was support your spouse. And I think this is a very big key to support your spouse. Standing up for what you believe in, having that confidence, not necessarily to stand toe-to-toe with them, but to not just give in and roll over. I think that shows support to your spouse, that you are also fighting for what's best for your family. And just because they have an opinion doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right opinion. Both of you, as we just said, need to be heard and listen to each other so that you can find the correct opinion or the correct plan for your family or your marriage.
100%. I mean, if you choose to be passive over and over and over again, you'll actually just be like stuffing those feelings down and your opinions down. And that's going to turn into aggressive behavior later.
Yeah.
That's our next, like, don't be passive, don't be aggressive. And so you might think that you're, doing the right thing, like just, like I said, just letting the other person kind of win that and not speaking up for yourself or your true feelings, or that, because it might cause conflict. But then when the time comes, it could even be a different subject, like just you have a trigger, and then that aggressiveness is going to come out because you've bottled up things that you chose to be passive over instead of speaking up.
Yeah, and it's really almost like just putting down your spouse's opinion. Coming in so aggressive, like, I don't care what your opinion is, I am gonna just fight tooth and nail to win this fight. That's actually causing, you are actually then standing in the way of a team win, because you are coming in so aggressive that, you're trying to better yourself, which is going to hurt the team.
I mean, that's Fight for Resolution does not have boxing gloves on. It's
bare knuckle fighting. It hurts more. No, I'm just kidding. It's like boxing with those what were the pillow boppers from our childhood, the inflatable things even.
I mean, you could have a pillow fight, and I'm sure the argument would be over, and then tickling or something.
Yeah.
If you really need to be aggressive, but we said don't be passive, don't be aggressive, and don't be passive aggressive, because that can be discovered by being passive aggressive in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you're keeping score, that could be a conscious or subconscious thing, but kind of like well, you're winning this fight. I'm letting you win this fight. So I'm gonna do or not do something to even the score, like to secretly do or not do something to even the score later. You know, if every morning, almost every morning, I shouldn't say every morning, but almost every morning, Julie drinks coffee and I get up
It's
and
every morning.
okay, she drinks coffee every morning.
I'll admit.
Almost every morning I get up and I turn on the coffee machine for her,
Yes.
so that she can come down. She won't have to wait for it to heat up. She can just get her coffee right away. And I think that just a simple example of passive aggressiveness would be like, okay, you won the fight last night. I'm not turning on the coffee machine for you for a week because now you're going to have to wait. Stupid little things like that are just, trying to get under your spouse's skin about something, to try and get even in a different way. You're just hamstringing yourself.
No, it carries on the fight, the conflict, and that's not fighting for resolution then, because when there's resolution, you get to move on.
Right.
So I think, being passive aggressive, you can even appear to be upset but not admit it.
Right.
You're trying not to be mad, but you're still being mean.
Yeah, kind of giving the silent treatment and just not really, like I said, like you said, just not admitting that you're upset. I mean,
well, I'm fine. How
many times do
that?
we go through this that, one of us is, can see it. We've been together for 17 years, married for 15 now, and so it's pretty easy for us to pick up on something when the other one's upset, and sometimes we still act like we can get that by them and just be upset and be grumpy and again,
I'm not allowed to say I'm fine. So I was saying that to see if he would laugh, because I'm like, I'm fine. He's like, no, you're not. I know you're not. So let's talk about it. And Thomas is like, draws it out of me because I'll lean toward being more passive, and that's where then I get aggressive, and it's like, because I've been passive, in the past, and they'll come out, and then being passive aggressive is just a hot mess. So
I want to throw something out real quick. We haven't talked about this, so this is a blindsided question that I'm throwing at Julie here.
Okay.
So this is like behind the scenes type of stuff. Do you think that in a situation like that, where one spouse is clearly frustrated but not admitting it, not necessarily being passive aggressive, or not even intending to, but they're just upset and they're not willing to say they're upset, or they're not willing to talk about it yet, do you think that it's appropriate or okay to say, yes, I'm upset, I don't understand why, I can't tell you why right now just because I don't know, give me some time and I'll come to you and let you know. I just need to be able to formulate the words. Do you think that's okay, or do you think it needs to be like no, we need to attack this and try and work through it right here, right now?
No, I mean, I think that's a big question, but put me on the spot. But I can relate to it, though.
I just thought of it.
Yeah,
So
I'm like, well, I feel like this has happened before, because like I said, maybe I'm just kind of feeling off, and I don't know if it's even that I'm mad at Thomas or mad at the kids or mad at work. Like, sometimes I don't know.
Right.
Just something's, and that's why it's like, if conflict, something needs to change. You can have conflict in other areas of your life, but it can affect your marriage if you don't know how to figure it out. So I think that's what you're saying. Like, something's bothering you. Hopefully, if your spouse is, intuitive enough to see that or feel that and ask, then yes. Just thinking of myself, I think I've said that, like, I don't know how to articulate it. I've said that before to you. I don't know how to articulate it. But keep pursuing me, like, keep drawing it out of me, because I need to talk about it, but I don't know who I'm mad at or what I'm mad at or what I need to say. And I'm afraid to say something wrong that will cause a conflict that's not for resolution. So, and then I think if that happens, then go, okay, Do you need to like go take a bath? You know, do you need to go for a walk?
Yeah.
Like, can we meet back in an hour? You want to, and that's where it's like, I'm not allowed to say I'm fine because obviously I'm not, but I'm not ready to talk about it. So yeah, I think, you know, what do you need to do to go reflect on some things and then come to that quote unquote fictitious table to put it out on the table to come up with a resolution.
Yeah, basically giving the communication that you're able to give, but even if that's really kind of nothing, like just saying like I really don't know, I'm not trying to withhold anything, letting your spouse know if they know something's wrong with you, and letting them know like, I know you know something's wrong, I also know something's wrong, I can't figure out what it is yet, but I will tell you as soon as I know. That communicates to them that they're on the right track. They can tell something's wrong with you, and you appreciate that they're checking on you, but you just can't articulate it. I think is totally fine.
Absolutely. I think big marriage tip for our listeners is if your spouse is pursuing you, don't shut down on them.
Yeah.
Like if they're asking questions and they're trying to be in tune to your feelings, like give them something so that you know, like, yes, I need this. This is what a relationship is, even if that means conflict. I mean, that's in all relationships, and it can lead to such great
breakthrough
resolution. Breakthrough is a great word, and even intimacy in your relationship, emotional and physical.
Well, and flipping that on its head, and if your spouse is pursuing you and they keep getting emotional doors slammed in their face, they're going to stop.
Yeah,
they're going to stop. I mean, you know, when I'm sure a lot of us have been through breakups at some point, and that's not something you like to continue going through. Once it's happened, you don't want to like keep reliving that scenario. And so, you know, from an emotional perspective, if it's kind of a similar thing, you know, if you're trying to pursue someone and you keep getting that door slammed in your face, eventually you're going to stop. And so, you know, yeah, give them something, communicate something to them. So that point went on a little longer than we expected because we had some additional thoughts pop up. So
hopefully that's helpful.
Bonus advice for you guys. Lucky day for all of you listening. So
yeah, I mean, we don't edit these podcasts, so we just Thomas and I look each other in the eyes and we kind of just talk and share our stories and hope that it's helpful to you. So we love that we are starting to hear some messages and reviews in this 15 lessons after 15 years of marriage. So glad hopefully it's helpful to you, but we go on some tangents sometimes. So pulling it back in, number 4 is don't use the words always and never. We actually wrote a blog post not too long ago called like hyperbole because that's what those words are. And when you have conflict and you know, you're fighting for resolution, we like number 1 marriage tip that we tell newlyweds is stay away from those always and never. Like you always do this and you never do this. It's in a negative term because it's just not true. Like usually what you're saying is like, you know, you always leave this out on the floor and I have to trip over. And you never listen to me.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute. Are those are extreme cases and it's just not true.
Yeah.
So then when you say that, then the walls just come up and it's not going to be helpful when you're trying to fight for a resolution. So go read the blog post to know more about our number 4 tip here in this, that don't use always and never. Yeah.
And I think the blog post is actually called our best marriage advice or something like that, you know, so
marriagepuzzle.com on the blog. There's, I think that's what it is. Our best marriage advice. Because this is our go-to piece of information for all of the friends getting married.
It was one of the first pieces of advice told to us when we were getting married. And it was a huge, tremendous help. Maybe we should put that as number 1 in this episode. These are not in any particular order necessarily.
We wing it.
So let's check out number 5. Don't make personal attacks on your spouse. I think it's pretty obvious why you wouldn't want to do that, but we'll break it down for you anyway, just in case. And basically, these are just going to cause delays in getting a resolution. If you come to your spouse and say like, you know, hey, here's what's going on, I want to try to work this out, you'll get to a resolution pretty quickly. But usually conflict and fights don't happen that way. But, if you come in with those personal attacks like a you always or a you never, that's a personal attack. That's just going to cause delays because, like you said, walls are going to go up. Now you're on the defense. Like, okay, you've got the boxing gloves. I'm going to go Bugs Bunny and put some horseshoes down in the end of my boxing gloves. And like, then that's just going to really cause the delay of getting to where either of you are trying to go. Even if originally you come into a conflict like, I need to win this, personally attacking your spouse is going to cause delays getting there. Your opinion may actually be right. You need to both talk through it and be heard and come about it the right way. But if you take those personal attacks, you're not going to get there fast.
Yeah, especially if you're bringing up stuff that only about, or earlier in a previous tip of your spouse is pursuing you and you're opening up to them and you have breakthrough, but then maybe the next conflict and the next argument, you use those personal things to attack them. Just one that comes to mind is like, you're just like your mom, or you're just like I mean,
famous last words.
The walls will, like, garage door comes down, everything. It's just, then I don't want to be on the same team as you.
Right.
I want nothing to do with that. So I would ask, like, what do you have to gain if you're personally attacking your spouse with your words that way? And instead of saying, like, hey, we're on the same team. So those things are off the table. We don't need to say always and never, or you're just like this, or you that. You've probably heard us say it in lots of other episodes. Start with I. Mm-hmm. It's a change, breakthrough there in your marriage of just saying, well, I feel this way, or I want to work on this, or I don't love it when you do this, but it's still like instead of you don't do that and you're, being mean to me and this, it's like, just kind of put it back on yourself. And then hopefully those personal attacks won't even be in your mind.
Yeah, those personal attacks are just going to cause additional and unnecessary emotional wounds. Mm-hmm. It's really not worth doing that. If you were somewhere else and someone else started attacking your spouse emotionally and verbally, you wouldn't stand for that. So why should you be the one to do that to them? You're the closest to them. You know the most about them. You know how to push their buttons, but you shouldn't do those kind of things because you don't want to, force your spouse into submission on something by poking those emotional wounds that you've brought up and kind of force them into submission. So be respectful. That goes a long way. Just, approaching the situation with respect, like you said, starting with an I, but not coming in and pointing the finger right at them and saying they're the one that's wrong. Respect goes a long way in any area of life, especially a marriage.
Absolutely. Totally. 100,000%. Just respect each other. You were so nice. It's probably when you're, choosing to get married and everything, and then it gets nasty years into the marriage, or could get nasty. So lean into the conflict. Like I said, go back and listen to the Good Fight episode if you want to know more of our stance on that and some takeaways from some books we've read. But these were our personal 5 things that we just brought to the top of the list today to encourage you and to fight for resolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the Marriage Puzzle Podcast. We appreciate you being here. Just a reminder that episodes release every week on Monday. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Marriage Puzzle. Check out our website, marriagepuzzle.com, for the blog posts that we've been referring to. Those come out each month. And this is if this is your first time listening to us, thanks for being here, and we'd love it if you would leave us a review so that we can start reaching more people, preferably a 5-star review. But also go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2. You'll get to know a little bit more about our story and what Marriage Puzzle means to us. And make sure that you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. As always, we look forward to you joining us next week, where together we'll work on marriage one puzzle piece at a time. See you later.
Bye-bye.